Welcome to Breakaway, the minor hockey podcast. I'm your host, Aaron Wilbur, founder of the Coaches Site. And as always, I'm joined by Ian Taylor, Executive Director of the OMHA. Ian, it's great to see you, man. We're back.
It's great to see you, Aaron. Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what it is. Glad to be back. Thrilled to be chatting with you again and talking hockey.
So we got lots to dive into today. We're going to talk about player pathways. There's been some changes that have been brought forth by Hockey Canada. But first, I wanted to ask you, how was your summer?
Summer was good. It's gone by extremely quickly. I think I think that's the fallout after getting through our COVID seasons and everyone wanting to get back and lots to prepare. But it's been good. It's been good. How about you?
It was really good. Had some time off. Obviously, we had our big conference at the University of Michigan. It was great to see you and a bunch of the OMHA staff down there. And had a little family time. But it was interesting. Last weekend, myself and a bunch of buddies who hadn't hung out together in a really long time went out to Predator Ridge, which is a golf resort kind of between Kelowna and Vernon out here in BC. And so, of course, we're all out on the deck. We got the barbecue going, and everybody can kind of imagine the scene. But one of my buddies, actually, we're each other's best man. He lives in Guelph now, where he grew up. He moved back from Vancouver a couple of years ago with his family, and he, he's a doctor now and has done really well professionally. But it amazes me. We're on the deck and everybody's sharing stories, and he starts talking about his last year of minor hockey when he played for the Guelph Frigid Air midget AA team, and they won provincials. You would think he had won the Stanley Cup.
Sure.
Like, it trumps anything else he's done in his professional life. And he talks about all the friendships he has, how he's still friends with these guys and what they're all up to. And it really just kind of planted that seed or reminder that, the reason we're doing all of this is for that right there, for a 42-year-old man to be sitting on a deck with his buddies, reliving the glory days and how that experience shaped the trajectory of his life. And so that was pretty cool. Yeah. And outside of that, so we had moved to Squamish, BC, my family. So Squamish is just kind of halfway between Vancouver and Whistler. The local minor hockey association has been bugging me all summer to get involved. And so I got involved with the tryout or as an evaluator. Haven't done this for a long time. And so I go the first day and I committed to it. And I'm like, oh man, it's like, every day this week, got to go to the rink 2 hours. It's sunny out. But I get there in day one and by day two, like I'm scribbling potential line combinations on my chart. I'm all excited at the players. I'm asking questions, and it's like it's hockey season. It's so much fun once we get into it. And so I'm very enthusiastic about the coming season and obviously getting to chat with you and connect with our listeners and doing our part to make sure that it's the best hockey season yet.
Aaron, I'll tell you just what that story made me think of, and I've had this conversation recently with parents who have kids playing, but are U14, U15, getting, and I've known them for a number of years, and just how quickly that whole minor hockey experience goes.
Oh man,
and I know we're going to talk about pathways and stuff, and that's. The mechanics of it and all that sort of stuff. But if I can say one thing, because I've said this, if I've said it once, I've said it 10 times in the last couple of weeks. It goes so quick. Enjoy the moment. Don't always be thinking about next year or what comes
where it's
next, where it's going. Enjoy the moment because it'll be gone. And once it is gone, I hope you're looking back at it like your buddy is. You know what I mean? Like you're looking at it with fond memories. They appreciated the moments, and I know I'm like sound like I'm on a soapbox here, but honestly, that's if that's the one thing our conversation today yields, it's that. Like seriously, enjoy the moment.
1,000%. And, so I went back and looked at and you guys have a great article on the OMHA website. If you just look up player pathways, it should pop up. It provides a great overview of what we're going to talk about today,
Right.
and also did some other research just to, what's happening in other parts of the world and how their player pathways have evolved. And the one thing that just jumps out at me is that we all have to go into this with an us mentality. Like the countries that develop the best players have that mindset of, it's about making sure that the pals that you play your first game with, those are the same pals you play your last game with. And if you can do that, we all know what it's like for the kids. They come up together, but then the parents come up together. The rink becomes a destination. It's fun, and from there you just got to enjoy the ride. Because it is. I'm convinced it's, despite whatever's going on in the news now, and listen, I know it's not all positive, but it's still the greatest game. It's still an amazing opportunity for young people just to stay connected, and and it's a bit of a classroom too, which is important. So into it.
Yeah.
Pathways. There's some changes this year. Do you want to maybe just touch on some of the key ones that players and families can anticipate?
You know what? I'll tell you. There's. You mentioned the article on our website. We've got to continue to educate everybody on pathways. So that's why I'm really glad we're talking about this. But more than anything, I think, Aaron, we've got to realize pathway, the Hockey Canada player pathways at each age group. U13, U11, U9, etc. It's a framework. Right. And I think what ends up happening is you start thinking, well, these are regulations. So these are things that are going to limit me. It's going to limit to how much hockey I can play. It's going to limit the number of games I'm going to participate in. It's going to limit when I can play full ice versus not. And I think and maybe that's something minor hockey has created because we have a lot of regulations, but we have to look at this as a framework. So what this is an opportunity to grab the best ideas so we can keep kids in the game playing for as long as possible. So as many as possible for as long as possible in the best environment possible. And again, it's very soapboxish, but again, if I'm going to say one thing about the whole pathways is think of it as a framework. And I think if we do that, we recognize that there's room to maneuver, but there is a definite path to take, and that's going to yield the best experience for the most amount of players. So now our channel, I'll throw one more at you.
Yeah.
Now there's the people. How do you differentiate between the pure recreational player and the player that wants to play at high performance levels? The answer is we need to give them the same foundation. They'll then go 1,000%. Wherever they need to go. So again, that's the absolute key. And I think that's, if I can shout that from the rooftops, that's what I would shout.
I totally agree with you. And it's interesting. So I don't know this for a fact. I'm pretty sure that when you and I grew up playing hockey, that there was no pathway. It was a throw what at the wall and see what sticks type of development philosophy. And, I can recall growing up that there was always these pockets. Now I'm talking in Western Canada, and I'm pretty confident that the same thing occurred in Ontario and other parts of the world, right? That you would see a group of kids come from one community or from one team. Generally, they'd grown up playing together. And it just seemed like, wow, like I know when I moved to Kamloops, like the age groups, my age group and ahead of me, like it was a factory. But they all played for Mitchie Fritz. One dad kind of grabbed them. You know why Mitchie was a good coach? Because he had a framework. He had a philosophy. Right. He had a path. And then you'd see these kids. I can remember playing a team from Duck Lake, Saskatchewan, a little community out on the prairies. And they had a heck of a team. Well, you know what? They had a dad. They had a couple parents that got involved, and they had a framework. They had a plan. And to me, the framework is so much about what you say no to. Because when you're starting out at the grassroots levels, man, it's infinite the amount of things you could work on. And if you try and do everything at once, you get nowhere.
Right.
But I think good coaches, good programs understand that, hey, they tell their people, hey, you don't need to worry about all this stuff. Don't
Right.
just focus on these key fundamentals. Let's get excellent at those. And then down the road, the other stuff is going to be a lot easier to acquire. But that takes patience. And as we know in hockey, patience isn't always
That's it.
the most
That's the
easy
living in the moment.
virtue to
Yeah.
adopt. Yeah,
Yeah.
totally. But I think that's so important to note. And I think one thing that I appreciate, and I probably wouldn't have appreciated it until I was in the role of a hockey director, that one thing these new pathways do is they say, hey, we're not going to base the evaluations on the first ice time or the second ice time or the third ice time. We're gonna give the kids that and the families that said, hey, you know what, we don't want to do hockey all summer. We want to get outside, or we might want to go do something. We might want to take our kids to a museum
Sure.
and do some of those things. And we're going to make sure that those kids, when they come back, we're going to allow everybody to ease in. It's not perfect. It's not going to get everybody on exactly the same page. But at least we're going to, when we base those evaluations or we do our tiering or we get into our working groups, we're going to make sure that we give all our kids the best opportunity possible, because we know from data that the larger we keep that pool,
Right.
the better opportunity we have to do a good job on the player development side, whether that's kids that win AA provincials or kids that go on to play in the OHL or kids that go on to play in maybe the NHL. But it starts with keeping that pool as big as possible and making sure all those kids get the fundamentals.
No question. And I think that's where we got to claw back some of the things that have evolved for whatever reason. So sometime between the time we played hockey, you and I, having tryouts in September, in Ontario, there was a period where it transitioned to spring tryouts, and that could have been everything for fundraising reasons to we got to order jerseys. That's the sort of thing I hear a lot of. So for some reason that happened, and now what we're going through with the pathways is we push back to the fall, and actually COVID happened at the same time, so we pushed back all our tryouts to the fall, and there are challenges. There's ice capacity challenges. There's, as you just said, we want to get everyone back on the ice. Then we want to give them a tryout experience where they're the first time they step on the ice isn't the first day of school and they get cut all in the same day. They're going to get a couple of skates, right? So we're in the midst of that. So we did have our older age groups go back to spring tryouts this year, but we've got U13 and below, which start I guess next Saturday. Basically we've got 5 days, and then they'll start the tryouts. I'm trying to think. It must be the 10th, something like that. Anyway, so the idea there is that, again, as you've alluded to, we've clawed a little bit of that back, and we're giving kids a chance to grow. Again, a year of growth, or even a summer of growth for a 8-year-old is significant, right? You're going to see them grow, mature, whatever the case may be, and then come back hopefully, fresh and ready to go. The counter to that is people say, well, now I got to be on the ice all summer. And again, so that's some of the push and pull we have when we're talking about the pathway. So what we're talking about is tryouts right at the end of the season. Is that the best time to try out for next season? Well, the answer is no. The answer is it's a long year. We're not giving kids, again, a chance to recharge and refresh. But as I say, parents are saying, well, now I got to skate all summer. The answer is you don't have to skate all summer. Now, you might go to a hockey school, you might go to a hockey camp, you might go to a power skating, sessions, but you're still going to be able to be outside swimming, playing baseball, soccer, or whatever you do. So, it becomes a thing where it's like, the pathways mean you shouldn't play hockey all summer. Well, that might be true, but it doesn't mean you can't work on skills. It doesn't mean you can't
Yeah.
Still be, you can, what it means is you're not playing hockey all summer the same way it looks all winter. Right? Does that make
For
sense?
sure. Totally. Like we don't want the Rocky montage of him training to fight Ivan Drago, like going for months at a time, getting ready for tryouts. We don't want young kids doing that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, but it becomes this kind of like absolutes. Like you're on the ice and then you cannot be on the ice, or you're forcing us to be on the ice every day. It's just not the case. There's an opportunity to still develop skills or work on things, or not do something entirely different. And we know all the benefits of playing other sports, whether they're organized or not. And I know I'm jumping all over the place here, Aaron, but I played soccer when I was a kid. That was my summer sport versus hockey. And I've never played an organized game of baseball in my life, but I've played baseball. I played all kinds of pickup baseball. I played pickup basketball. I played just as you have, So, again, there's the framework of what's best for young kids. Do different things, different experiences, growth and development, and come back ready to rock. But that doesn't mean you can't have worked on some skills in the off season. So
no, and to me that's the way I interpret it. And I'm coming from a part of the world where fall tryouts are the norm, like spring tryouts. When I heard that, I was like, who tries out for a team in the spring and then for next year? But
see how you're right. Like, so see, as an outsider, how you're right. You go, well, that doesn't make any sense. Whereas it became the norm here, and now we're fighting the other side of it. So that's the push and pull of change, right?
Yeah, for sure. And I'll just sort of spit out a couple of things. So one, we work really closely with Minnesota Hockey, which, again, just based on the data and statistics, like it's hard to argue that anybody does a better job of developing players for professional hockey than they do in that state, at least in North America. And like they don't get going until like late October.
Right.
Like their summer, like their hockey camps and all that stuff that we're like, some families are scrambling to do in July and August. They're like, no, like we don't even open the rinks up until September. And then we ease into it for like 6 weeks. And the idea is, again, they have this mindset. Let's keep the pool as big as possible, provide equal opportunity to develop all the kids. And let's not put this pressure on anybody having to go out and, get on the hamster wheel at too young of an age. And, and I'll mention this, and I thought this was so interesting. So I found this article, or this, I guess, report on the internet, and it's a study they did in Sweden. Mm-hmm. And so in this study, it's called The Path to the National Level. So this isn't just in hockey. This is on national team sports. And granted, Sweden's a pretty active and athletic country. So I'm just going to read one sentence. A group of national team members in 7 sports was compared with a group of youngsters who were very successful up to about 15 years of age.
Right.
The national team athletes had been able to develop motor, mental, and social skills and to integrate the dominant value systems of competitive sport with their own lifestyles in an optimal way. So the way I interpret that, it just reinforces the fact that a lot of the skills that we need to acquire to be good hockey players, good baseball players, good soccer players, again, we're talking, these are players that after the age of 15, really excel. They acquire a lot of those skills in just their day-to-day lives by, running around at the park, by going camping with their families, by doing whatever, and just how important this. And I think the problem is we can't measure that, right? Like we can't, a kid can't score a goal and we can't say, oh, that's because I took him on a vacation in the summer, or, we just let him rip around the park. So, but I think it's really, really important that we do that. So
yeah, for sure.
I'd be curious. So what's the feedback? You've touched on maybe a little the pushback, but I know that it's kind of tough to evaluate because this isn't new necessarily, but I would say this is the first year as an association that you kind of get to roll it out in the way that it was intended to be due to the pandemic. Is that fair?
Yeah, for sure. And again, like I say, having, being able to have done some of our older group in the spring. We've got the younger kids who again have had those months over the summer to grow essentially, and then come back in the fall. So that is new or different, that we've split it, and again allowing them to come back to the ice and have that, as you say, kind of that runway to get started. And so again, I'll go back to my earlier comments about being in a rush. Those are the habits or the history we have to break, and again have that runway that you talked about, like Minnesota has implemented. So that's the idea, right? But again, not being in a rush. It's a long season. We talked last year about how we're making the season longer. Everyone's playing meaningful hockey until at least March 1st. We had really most of our hockey went well beyond March break out here.
That's awesome.
Last year. So again, that's the idea. Maybe start a little bit later. We've got tryouts. We've got a development phase, it takes us almost to the end of September. Then you can start with tournaments are allowed to start up, and then league play will start up anytime after September 30th. So and again, some might start later, Aaron, just as you alluded to. Some places get their ice in later. They'll take that longer runway again. But knowing that we're not going to be eliminating teams in January or February, they're going to play right through to March break at the late or at the earliest, and then some will carry on after that. So it's that start a little later but run longer, have again more people participating longer. So to me, that's the wins. That's the wins to the collective. That's the wins to developing the pool. That's the win to having a foundation. And then players find their watermark, and their watermark is, I want to play once a week, or I want to play 5 times a week, or I want to play, again, more competitively, or hockey is one of my interests along with all these other things. And we still fill one of those areas for people. So people will find their watermark both on level of play, but also frequency. And that's where we want to get to, right? So it's meeting the needs of that person, both as an athlete, but also just, again, holistically, what else do they have going on in their life with school and their family and other activities? That's where we want to get to.
Totally. And it's so interesting because, one thing that's been included in the pathway is the recommendation that there are 2 breaks of 5 days outside of, an assumed break over the Christmas holidays. And, I can recall a story of when I was a hockey director at a club that took hockey really, really seriously. And it was our, I guess would have been our U11, we call it our Adam A1 team. And this particular young man, his dad had played in the National Hockey League. And I get a call from the coach, and the coach says, "We got a really big problem." I'm like, "Okay, what's the really big problem?" And he's like, "This player and his family are going to Hawaii." And I'm like, what's the problem with that? That sounds awesome. He's like, "Well, he's doing it like in season." And I'm like, and I said, "Okay, well, can't you just miss a weekend of games?" He's like, "No, like the other parents are freaking out. Like they want him off the team. It's unfair because now they can't take holidays because they didn't take holidays because of our schedule." So I bring the family in for a quick meeting, and I said, "Listen, the temperature's risen a little bit with the 10-year-old team. Can you just kind of walk me through the decision making?" They said, "Look, it's our, this is the parents talking. It's our kids' grandparents. I think it was their 50th wedding anniversary. So a big milestone." And they're like, they're bringing the whole family out. And I said, "Okay, well, why did you pick, this part of the season? Like, is there not a break?" They're like, "Break." They're like, "Have you looked at our schedule?" Like we are on the ice 6 days a week. Like they're like, it didn't have to be this week. But there was no obvious break to do it in. And we just figured it was better here than missing a tournament. So anyways, like it literally exploded. But my point is that at that stage of life, I'm like, that's, I think a really, proactive use of time to say, hey, you got some windows here to go do some other stuff and kids get a break. And I'll tell you what, when the best practice of the year will be? It'll be the practice after the 5-day break when the kids are just fired up, excited to get back. And it's, it's quality over quantity. So I love when I saw that. I didn't realize that was part of it, but just reading through it, I'm like, okay, that's a great addition and is, give everybody a little bit of, and
it's not easy to implement like that. That's the one thing I'll say. So so now we got to blend the philosophical with the practical, and we're working with our leagues to identify when they're going to start, how many games they're looking for. They want to get again to that March 1st date where everyone's playing, and then beyond, and identifying where we could have some of those breaks, Aaron. And I think there's this is where we get back into framework, right? So some of our leagues may have breaks, March break, for example. But to your point, like you watch F1. I know you watch F1. I watch F1. Yeah. We see other European soccer. It won't happen this year because of the World Cup, but they have a winter break. There's a break in the middle of the F1 season. It tells you people need some breaks, right? So where leagues can accomplish it, I think it's fantastic. But associations, certainly at the house league level, perhaps they might have a little more control because they're internal. Yeah. But then to your point, coaches, you cannot have the pedal to the metal all season. And you and I have both seen fantastic teams who, get to the end of the season or near the end of the season, and what happens? They run out of gas. At older teams, there could be injuries. There's in other sports, you have that kind of building towards a championship, for example, and that tends to maybe swimming or gymnastics, that sort of thing, where they're not competing all the time. Whereas hockey, we have these competitions throughout, right? Both regular season and tournament. But maybe you have to gauge that through your season, your peaks and valleys. And we've all had dog days of the season, end of November, beginning of December, kids, especially younger kids, thinking about Christmas. Certainly February, just because it's February. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Totally.
So like there. So again, it's not a situation where it's just regulated, mandated. I think everyone can play a role, right down to the team level, on saying, how are we going to build, and then how are we going to kind of reload and then build again over the course of the season. And that's challenging because parents are like, we got to go, more is better. And so I think that's where those conversations and planning and even if it's, I'm sure you've done this with your teams, Aaron, like maybe we don't have to work on breakouts again today. So maybe today, I did it with, even when I had 12, 13, 14-year-olds, we would have a cross ice tournament. So it wasn't just for 8-year-olds. We would have a cross ice tournament, one practice. And it was like, it was the equivalent of being outside on the pond, really. But it was something different. It was fun. It was competitive. But it was a change, you know what I mean? So there's there's the part where you work within the framework again, right? So, and there's got to be some creativity, I guess, is the best word to say it, try stuff.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I think if you're a parent and when you go and watch practice, if every practice looks the same throughout the year, then that's not a good sign. No. And, you talked about it earlier about how, if a player is going on the ice in the summer, that's okay.
Yeah.
But it can't look the same as the ice time they're going to have in November. And I would argue, and this is the great thing about the pathway and the template it provides is it breaks the season up into modules. It says, here's some things to focus on in each module or part of the season. It gives really clear guidelines that, hey, at least 85% of your time at U11 and below should be spent on, skill development. And, you got your 15% to work on your team play, whatever that looks like. But it just provides some guidelines. And I would encourage every coach and every minor hockey organization is be really clear on what each of those phases look like. Communicate it with your parents so everybody's on the same page and nobody's expecting one thing at September and comes to the rink and sees something entirely different. Explain the rationale behind how all this works together. And I think a great example I would use, if we look at football, for example, professional football, the best football players, their off season starts, it is scripted. They show up for mini camps. There's no pads. There's limits to how much contact they can have. There's the amount of hours that these professional, best in the world athletes can be in the facility. They have all these constraints because what they know through science and a ton of money that goes into player development is that if they burn them out all through the year, then they're not going to get to the Super Bowl. They're not going to climb that mountain. So they periodize it, and and that's what ultimately gets the best results. And ultimately, that's all we're trying to do here is just create an optimal framework. That's, again, a lot of smart people, I hate to say it, probably smarter than you and I.
Definitely.
That came up with this and said, hey, this isn't a shot in the dark. This is proven. This is through looking at multiple sports all around the world on the best way for kids to acquire the skills necessary to, in some cases get to the highest levels, but in most cases to just really enjoy the game and have the best experience possible.
But Aaron, and you know what, you're right. And that's why we got to talk to, and I think, I want to say most people, I think appreciate, what we're talking about. I think we do have to speak to, again, keeping the recreational player playing and giving them an opportunity to have an environment to play and just enjoy the sport. And the family or the player that wants to play at a higher level and wants to play with more frequency, we have to speak to them too and make them realize this isn't something to hold people back. It's really to give, again, a longer runway to how you want to play and where you want to go, and hopefully put you in a situation to be successful long term. And again, so I'll go back to appreciating where you are now, but also it's not a race. Again, cliches. It's it's a marathon, not a sprint. All that sort of stuff. But really, this is going to pay long-term dividends for everybody. Again, I think that the most important thing is having the foundation, keeping the kids in the sport, and then they'll be able to pursue where they want to go. Use school as our example. There's curriculum at every age group. It's the same here.
1,000%. And you don't go to school 12 months a year, and you don't get to go to school 10 hours a day.
Touche. And at the younger age groups, it's smaller desks. Well, we have smaller playing area at U9 and below, right?
So true.
In other sports, it's shorter hoops. That's shorter hoop or smaller diamond or whatever, or smaller soccer field. So there's that, but you still have in school, perhaps higher achievers or people who are more advanced. And then you have, kids that need support in whatever subject, but we're meeting the needs of all of them, and we're bringing them up based on their age. We're not teaching, calculus to grade 5s, right? You know what I mean? And maybe I'm overstating it, but you know what I'm saying.
Listen, 1,000%, and I'll use a great example. So I'll ask you this question, to start off with.
Sure.
Over the past 10 years, who has been from a player production, national team achievement? Who's been the top hockey country for the last 10 years? And I don't think it's even close.
I'm afraid who you're going to say.
Well, it's Finland.
Okay.
Okay, I not no. It's so it's Finland. It's no, it's been Finland. You look at what they've done internationally at the U18, U20, World Championships, Olympics,
Okay.
players in the national hockey, all that.
Yeah.
They're the
Yeah.
best. So we get to work closely with them. So they started a rule, or a framework a couple of years ago that said there can be no position specific hockey
Yeah.
before the age of 10. And and they've admittedly there was some pushback there because of course when
Sure.
you talk with U10, when you go to, and I think everybody can relate to this, when you get a group of kids and you look at the best players and you ask them what position they play, well, they all play center.
Yeah.
Like nobody wants to play D. Nobody. They're all your best players are centermen. So they go in there and they say, listen, like, and so it's not just that you can't play position specific hockey. They're like,
Yeah.
we don't want you teaching the positions. We just want you focusing on skills. That's all we want you to do. And the kids in their games, everybody's going to play goal. Everybody's going to play everywhere. And they're just inherently going to pick up, different things that are going to help them along the way. But I think that, again, it's those, but they do it because they know that they're in a country where, listen, we got more human beings in the province of BC than they do in all of Finland.
It's
remarkable what they've done. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
it's
they
my
do
favorite
it again,
analogy. It's my favorite analogy, Aaron. Yeah. It's 5 million people the size of Alberta. That's what it is.
Yeah. But these aren't mistakes. They've looked at the data and they found that, by doing this in the long run, it's going to pay off.
Yep.
And, sure, they're kids that probably love to work on, catching pucks to the middle of the ice and just playing center. For sure there are. But, it doesn't matter. It's been inconsequential. If anything, it's just accelerated things there. So again, what I'd want to hit home today is that these decisions that are made, they're really made to serve, both populations, the populations, the kids that just want to show up and have fun. We want to make sure they have fun, but we want to make sure they have fun all the way to 18. They keep playing, but it's also in the big picture, it's helping the kids that are on the fast track or really, perhaps have accelerated their development. This is in their best interest too. So,
absolutely,
again, I think that this conversation is important, but I would encourage, all the coaches out there, and anybody involved with minor hockey is to make sure that you over communicate the plan and what's happening every step of the way. So everybody's on the same page and they understand that this is done to enhance the experience, not limit it.
Yeah. Yeah. The one thing, and I've become a bit of, I seem to have this conversation a lot lately with, being able to argue both sides of the same issue, right? So trying to see both sides and trying to see where we're deficient, where we have to do a better job of either promoting, educating, selling the idea so people understand. Because one of the things I do here, and what you just said, I agree with, again, wholeheartedly. But I know there's people who say one plan can't fit both the recreational player and the player who wants to be, again, playing at the highest level or is higher skilled, but the answer is that's why it's a framework. It does cover both. It's not a one size fits all. But it's an opportunity to meet the needs of those athletes. So then we can bring them all up to a point where then they can decide, once or twice a week is enough, or I want to play more and I want to be more, again, dedicated. I want to be maybe not wholly hockey specific, but probably increasing hockey specific. And what we're talking about here is, U14 and above, right? We're talking up to that point, filling everyone's bucket with as much, skill development. So they can go out and play the game and enjoy the game, and keep coming back. And again, there's my constant refrain, but so that's what allows it to cover everybody.
Well, listen, so we got to put a bow on this episode. We're going to come back in a couple of weeks. We're going to talk about player evaluations, but I would maybe you can just finish in. So at this time of the year, where's your focus and where do you feel the focus of associations should be as we get ready for rubber to hit the road?
Well, I mean, there's the mechanics, right? We're going to start up after Labor Day with again preparation skates. So again, getting people back on the ice. We will then start our tryout phase over the next 3 weeks or so, and then have an additional period of time up to the end of September for development phase. So it's all laid out there, right? And there's the mechanics and getting teams selected, getting players rostered, and again, so they can start participating in exhibition games and tournaments that that'll start up at the end of September. So those are the mechanical stuff, and so that's keeping people very busy, getting coaches and officials into clinics, certified, recertified, so they're ready to go. So all those things are happening. It's really an incredible dynamic of administration, volunteerism, that all come together to allow kids to play our sport. I mean, it's truly incredible, the work of people, and again, largely volunteers, to allow kids to play. But the thing I'm gonna throw at you is what I'm hoping we start to see is there's things you have to do. You need to have certain qualifications to get on the bench, but I think or to be active, or you have to start here, or you can't play games till there. Anyway, so those are the must-dos, the have-to-dos. But I think we got to focus on why we do things, what we believe in, what are our values, right? And again, it's very high and mighty, but I think that's what we have to get back to. We have coaches that have to go to coaching clinics because we believe kids need a foundation of skill development, and we need it consistent, and we need to arm people with tools and resources. That's why we do it. We're not punishing people by making them take clinics. It's going to help them, and it's going to help kids and families enjoy the sport. And I think, so there's the big thing. There's my big takeaway. Not looking at everything as mandates or requirements, but the reason we have these things in place is because we believe they're important, and we believe they have value, because we want kids' experience to be incredible, So there's my parting shots.
I like it, man. Well, listen, and I'll just finish on this. I think that, listen, every minor hockey association, the OMHA, just like every minor hockey association across the country in North America, is largely driven by volunteers. And if you've never volunteered for your local association, what you need to know is that this month, September, is like, good luck if you got a full-time job. Like, it is all in. You're working, like, literally, I mean it. I guarantee you, like, every volunteer is nodding their head right now. Like, it is, you're up past midnight every night. You're trying to get things organized. You're doing your best to answer every email. So two things. One, if you're trying to communicate with your local association, cut us some slack if the response isn't timely, even though it's really important to you. And two, be really clear in your own head. Is this something that does this need to be dealt with right now? Like, is it urgent? Because if it's not, let's not burn out our volunteers the first month of the season, so they got no gas left in the tank. Cut them some slack. I think that's really important. And otherwise, I would just say this: just circling back to your original point, it goes fast, so enjoy it. Yep. Enjoy this journey. Enjoy the car rides. Enjoy it, because it's the best, but it is fleeting. And listen, I'm just glad we're talking again, man. And we're getting ready. I'm excited for this season, and we got a great lineup of guests, and we're going to make sure we all have lots of fun on here. So good to see you, man. And we'll chat in a couple of weeks.
Thanks, Aaron. Appreciate it, man.